Recording in progress.
The mics are unmuted. We are recording it at 7 o'clock.
Okay. We're going to call to order the June 6th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting. We'll take roll call. Commissioner Lind? Here. Commissioner Hargreaves? Here. And Commissioner Brummond is here. And absent is Commissioner Kazicki, I believe. All right, and at this time, I'm going to invite you guys to stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and then first up are there any changes that need to be made to the agenda by staff or by the commissioners?
I don't have any changes, Madam Chair.
Okay, if there's no changes from the commissioners, then I'll go ahead and entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay. And then next, we're going to go ahead and take a look at approving the meeting minutes from May 2nd, 2024. If there aren't any changes or comments, then I'll take a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll make a motion. Is that you starting one, or is that
No.
you asking for one?
Asking.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
And I seconded.
All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
And then that takes us to our first piece of business tonight, which is
Madam Chair,
Oh,
I think we skipped
open forum. I did.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Open forum is an opportunity for anyone who's here to bring to our attention any matter they'd like to discuss that is not currently on the agenda. So if there's anyone here who would like to address the commission for any item that's not on tonight's agenda, you can feel free to approach the podium, state your name and address. I'm guessing that there isn't anyone here.
I don't have any.
Okay, so then we'll move on and we will get to our first piece of business, which is the public hearing for Upward Acres preliminary plat and variance. And we're going to start with the staff report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First item is Upward Acres, which is a preliminary plat and variance request. The applicant is Sky's Limit LLC. They are proposing a 6 single-family residential subdivision on roughly 61 acres on a property at 22625 County Road 10. It's south of County Road 10 and west of Bechtold Road. And a variance will be required for the existing residence to remain, as it will have a reduced setback from County Road 10. The plat consists of one property with 6 development rights currently on our map. The existing structures are to remain on proposed Lot 1, Block 1. The existing home was built in 1960, so that's why it does have a smaller setback than what is typical for county roads. And then there are 2 existing accessory structures. One will become an attached structure to the existing house, and then the pole barn will remain detached. Additionally, the 2040 Natural Resources Inventory map does indicate a high-quality maple basswood community on the southern portion of the subject, which is of the subject property, which is also adjacent to a wet prairie community. The 6 lots range from 4.2 acres to 30 acres in size, and these all exceed the minimum lot size of 2 acres in the rural residential for a standard plat. With the dedication of a 50-foot half right-of-way on County Road 10, which was confirmed by a memo we received from Hennepin County, and that has been provided on the dais. The existing structures on Lot 1 will not be able to meet the 100-foot setback from county roads, so the house will have a 44-foot setback. The garage would technically have a 44-foot setback as well, because it'll become one structure with the house. And then the pole barn would have a setback of 83 feet. The pole barn will be able to comply with a 60-foot setback, which is allowed with increased landscaping per city code, but the house setback does require the variance. The lots will be served by a new public road built to a rural section standard. The staff report did call out an 80-foot street right-of-way to be required, which is the standard city specification. However, engineering has since reevaluated this requirement as compared to what's been previously approved for other rural subdivisions recently. And they stated that if the applicant can show the drainage and the home side of the ditch can all be accommodated within a 66-foot right-of-way, then that can be reduced accordingly. So that would be a change to the condition of approval that staff is willing to concede. County asked the city to consider, Hennepin County asked the city to consider connections for future road connections to east, south, and west. That limits direct access onto County Road 10 in the long term. City staff really argued that wetlands to the east and south make a connection very unlikely for Lot 1, which would have a direct access served by their existing driveway instead of the new proposed road. But there is a private drive to the east, and so staff working with the county and city staff includes a condition of approval to have right-of-way dedicated to make, but a street connection would not be constructed from where the cul-de-sac currently is shown to the west boundary line. Just basically an easement would be established to the west property boundary to allow for future connection under a condition where the private drive were to become a public street. We don't anticipate that to happen, but it's not, just today I'm receiving a request for a private street to be considered for a public road, so it does happen. So the applicant, though, did reach out after the staff report was published and shared that this does conflict with one of their stormwater ponds, and they don't believe there is an alternative location for the ponds. I believe they're wanting to speak with the commission about that this evening. For the septic, an alternative septic site must be shown and permitted by Hennepin County for Lot 1. Right now, just the existing site is shown, and that was a condition that didn't make it into the staff report, so that'd be a new condition of approval in the draft resolution. Additionally, there are a few septic sites that do not meet the 75-foot setback from a delineated wetland edge, so new locations where those setbacks aren't met must be provided and permitted by Hennepin County, and that is a condition of approval. And then the wetland delineation is currently under review with the city, which must be finalized prior to the final plat application moving forward. There were 6 wetlands identified and with the submittal from the applicant. And the plans do show wetland buffers and the monument signs, but there were more than one area where it didn't meet the buffer width didn't seem to comply with the averaging requirements. And then there are a couple areas where some additional wetland buffer signs are needed, so staff will continue to work with the applicant to make sure that the plan ultimately is compliant. Lot 1, you do have to consider the accessory structure footprint requirement. It is a 4.2 acre parcel which allows a footprint of 2,188 square feet. The first 1,000 square feet of an attached accessory structure is exempt from this calculation. So the applicant narrative does provide that the detached garage will become attached to the house. And then the remaining detached pole barn is about 1,800 square feet, looking at the foundation. So staff does recommend a condition of approval to ensure that the detached garage does actually indeed become an attached structure, to require submittal as part of their financial security based on the estimated cost to demolish the garage. So if we don't receive a permit within a year to attach the detached garage, within a year, then we would be able to make sure that the lot does end up complying with the standard. For landscaping, the plan reflected 5 new trees of 2-inch caliper at planting, with the narrative explaining property owners would be responsible for planting the trees and establishing the ground cover. So there were a few stipulations added to have the landscaping plan and process meet the city requirements, including that the overstory trees must be at least 2.5-inch caliper at the time of planting. We do need to have tree species identified. They can always amend the landscaping plan later if a property owner does not want that tree, but we have to show that no more than 1/3 of the trees are of a single species in order to meet city code. And of the required trees, they can certainly plant more than that, and it's that becomes irrelevant for anything that exceeds the requirement. And then they also have to have the anticipated ground cover shown on the plan. And the applicant is responsible for installing the required trees and ground cover. That's not a requirement of the homeowners. It's a requirement of the development contract. So, and plantings must be shown along County Road 10 for a reduced setback for the existing structure. So they will have to either provide a tree survey of what's already there or to show how it complies with the landscaping standard, or where it's needed, add additional landscaping to meet the flexibility requirement. Finally, an overhead streetlight is required per city policy as a public safety requirement at the intersection of County Road 10 and the new public road. This is consistent with what has been previously required of recent rural subdivisions. And then the variance, the findings of fact are described in the staff report. Again, it's to allow a 44-foot setback from County Road 10 for the existing residents on Lot 1. Staff does believe that the existing nature of the structure provides a practical difficulty in complying with the setback after the new right-of-way is dedicated to meet the Hennepin County requirements. So there are findings of fact that support granting the variance. And again, staff finds it to be reasonable to add a stipulation that they provide additional landscaping that's compliant with our flexibility clause. So at this time, the commission should open the public hearing and take any testimony. Staff recommends approval, and there are 2 draft resolutions, one approving the preliminary plat and then the other approving the variance.
Okay, thank you. And at this time, then, we'll open the public hearing, which I know that the developers are here, so we can start with giving you guys an opportunity to approach if you'd like to say anything at the podium. We'll let you guys go first, and then if there's anyone else here who wants to speak or make comment, then we'll follow up with you.
Thank you, Commission. My name is Paul Otto. I'm the project engineer on this, representing my clients here. We are good with the staff report with the exception of the road right away to the private drive on the west side of us. We kind of look at that as, you know, it's a private drive now. We aren't able to access it. Maybe someday in the future we could. But there are some practical difficulties. I don't know if you have an overhead, but if you're okay with it, I brought a couple handouts just to make a picture kind of work a little bit better.
Sure.
I just have 2 of them, but if you can share a little bit, and then I'll just talk through this a little bit.
And I'm super familiar, so you can look.
All right, so this is just the end of our cul-de-sac that we have shown, and you know, we've got a bunch of detailed engineering plans, but basically if you come off of County Road 10, there's kind of a hill out in the middle. We're gonna come up with our road to the top of that hill, and then that hill's gonna come back down towards the wetland in the back. That's kind of the natural landscape of the property. That's where water is flowing now. The wetland in the back is the lowest elevation. So our road water is being collected in ditches, and it's gonna come to a pond that's near the front of the property near County Road 10, and then on the back side of that hill. So as we get to the back of our cul-de-sac, we've done the septic testing. We've gotten those approved with Hennepin County. Lots 2 and 4 on either side of the cul-de-sac are there's really only these 2 places to do septics. We dug a bunch of holes. We actually met out with them. We dug backhoe to make sure and confirm that they were good with everything. So on my map, the red hatched areas are the approved septic areas that we found on the lots, and we believe these are really the only septic areas. There's not really much room to move them. We tried going downhill, we couldn't, because we wanted a little bit more room in the cul-de-sac as well. We're really getting kind of pinched there. We've got a lot of things that we have to comply with. We have to have our 200-foot road frontage, so that's one thing that sets our lot lines. We have to have 2 septics on each lot. That's crowding us in here. We need to get a driveway past the cul-de-sac, and then through, there's a old crossing on the creek down there that we're going to be utilizing for the driveway, so we have to get our driveway in there, and we have to have our stormwater ponding. Our stormwater ponding can't go in either lot 2 or 4 because of elevations. We can't get the water physically to the area and then outlet it into the pond. So our stormwater pond is set in this location, and as you can see, the yellow, so the blue on there is the driveway to the south, and the yellow is a 60-foot right-of-way, whether that was 60 or 66 feet, we could live with. What we are proposing as a compromise would be that we would grant a street easement for a street, but be allowed to put our pond in that street easement, with the thought being that when this redevelops, more than likely, we've got a higher density, something's changed out there. The private drive on the east is an existing condition. Those homes it's all developed along there. They have approved access with Hennepin County. So if this connection is ever needed, I feel like it's going to be, maybe when city sewer and water comes, something's gonna be different. And with that, stormwater management is gonna be different. So if we put in a new road, we're gonna have to redo that. And this pond would probably have to be reconfigured. And so if that would come to fruition and the street on the west side of the property became a public street, our lot 3 could now access off of there, and we would probably have the opportunity to expand this pond into the area that was the driveway. So that's our compromise. We would really rather not give it a street easement at all, but if you feel like you really need to have it, we would ask that we would still be allowed to put our stormwater ponding in it in the interim until, if and when that right-of-way is ever needed. Like I said, the rest of the things are, we've looked through them, we've worked through them, we don't have any issues with any of the other conditions. We will work with staff to that. So I can sure answer any questions.
Okay. Do you,
Can I ask you, so it's the right of way that's the pain point, the 75-foot for septic is not, because you were commenting on the challenges there of the certain areas that they can be. Do you find that will be manageable, the 75 foot?
The 75 feet that they're referring to isn't on these two septics, it was the one on lot 3 on the south, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Lot 3 was shown too close. But we've since moved that with Hennepin County.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So Woodland Court Second Edition, that's not existing right now? To the west?
those are exist, that's
Yeah,
an
those
existing
are-
neighborhood. Yeah, that's a private drive.
Yep, those are developed.
It's not a public street.
Because what's the easement needed for if that's already developed?
If it becomes a public street. We'll touch on it when we get to our discussion. So I'm gonna open the public hearing just in case anybody here has comment, but we'll come back to that. Or Natalie can explain, we'll explain. But yeah, does anyone else have questions? We can call you back up as well. So I think at this point in time, thank you so much for explaining. Thank you for offering a solution. We'll consider and discuss. And then we'll just let any members of the public who want to make a comment
Thank you.
regarding, thank you. Regarding the Upward Acres preliminary plat, if there's anyone here who wants to make public comment, feel free to approach the podium. State your name and address, but I don't think there is, so I don't want to scoot through, but I think that I'm going to say that the public hearing has been opened, and then I will also take a motion to close the public hearing because no one's approaching.
I'll motion to close the public hearing.
I can second that.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And anyone opposed? Okay, so now we'll get to the points where we can have some discussion. And so if we want to address, Commissioner, your question first regarding the Woodland Court Second Edition. And your question was, are there existing homes there?
Yeah, what is there right now?
There are existing homes, but it's a private drive. That street is not a public
One
street.
private drive off County Road 10
Yeah,
for multiple homes?
Yep, for multiple homes off the County Road, so there's a private drive that actually abuts this project site to the west boundary of this project site. So basically, looking at the private drive agreement, there is a clause on there that says should another house enter into the agreement, it would become a public street at that time. So that would be a condition where we could theoretically see something added if something were to be, if something were to be added at this point that I can't foresee. I don't foresee that particularly happening anytime soon, but it's not impossible, and it is a specific clause of the private drive agreement. The other scenario that can happen is if they have troubles maintaining it. the people along the private drive.
Hi, nice
Comes
to
the
meet.
city to request that they be, sorry, distracted. That they be, that this private drive turn into a public street. So again, I have I have to return a call with someone who is having that request right now. Not on this drive, but it does happen and it's not unheard of. And then the other scenario would be far into the future, should something redevelop, whether that be under rural development standards or urban standards. It would allow for a more integral road network that alleviates direct access onto County Road 10. So that's the planning purpose. So staff is going to show you where the connections can be made. But that's part of the reason why we're not requiring the road to actually be constructed where that blue box is shown in the staff report, because we don't think it's something that's going to happen anytime soon. It just allows for planning in the future for a road network.
And it doesn't look like there's any development rights on that property to the west. It looks like there's 9 separate lots on that property to the west, and they all access from a private drive. I'm looking at the development rights map.
So there are 8 property rights on a property west of that division. So theoretically, someone could purchase several properties in a row and want to try to subdivide it. So it's not, again, we're just trying to think through all scenarios and just trying to call out, kind of bookmark it
Yeah, 'cause
for a scenario where we would want a connection.
The property with
To the
8
west.
development rights to the west of that property, that has access from, what is it, Ellerby? It's a road that just went in for Karenini's development.
Yeah, but again, staff's
Just
going to
saying
want to
if.
have road connections. It's not great practice to have a whole bunch of streets that just kind of dead end. You want something that allows for an internal network that doesn't rely heavily on access to County Road 10. So that's what it would plan for in the future. That's the argument for it. That's what the county's asked us to do.
And they may never
Yeah.
even do it.
It's
Correct.
not,
It might not happen, but it at least bookmarks it so that should there be conditions that the unlikeliness, because things that aren't likely to happen, I see happen quite a bit. Yeah. So I hear from people all the time that they'll never sell a property, ever, 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 and then the property's up for sale. So it allows to plan for those contingencies. And I think staff is open
That's what I was
city
gonna
staff is open to looking at.
Allowing a stormwater pond.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think there would be some allowance to look at what options there might be, and really, the county was the one that really was driving this requirement. So I think if really the desire is we don't want this easement ever to allow for an internal road network to the west, then I think staff would be okay with that ultimately, so.
it is not a requirement, it's just a consideration, right? It's required to consider it. Got it.
My question, I guess, regarding the proposal about allowing the water pond in that right-of-way easement would the requirement to connect a driveway for Lot 3 to that public street, if it becomes a public street, be a requirement of the future resident of that property? That's my only question.
Lot 1 or Lot 3? Are we talking about these?
Lot 3, because
Oh,
the
okay.
recommendation was at that point in time, because Lot 3 is the one who has to have this like really long driveway crossing a creek, because, so I abut this property, so I'm very familiar, and what a year to be putting in an application with the excess amount of rain we've had. So I have standing water everywhere, I can only imagine what it looks like there. So, when you made the proposal, you indicated that at such a time as if that Woodland Hills becomes a public street, Lot 3 could access through that public street, and then that leaves more area for that stormwater pond to be reconfigured at the time that right-of-way is utilized into a full street. I guess my only question is, would the responsibility for making that connection, that cost, changing the driveway configuration, be on the future resident?
Yeah, I guess that it probably depends on when it happens.
Sure.
Because I guess when I look at it, the need for this connection is gonna be some sort of a change in the land use. Because we've already got the road there with those lots. The only way even if that comes into the city, I don't think that Hennepin County is gonna close their access. You're just improving the road. So I think it's gonna be when sewer and water comes or some other thing change, and I think what's gonna happen is that those septics go away, we probably have a lot more room there. Requiring that owner to connect, I would think would be a burden on that property, and I think that if the connection was gonna go through there, that would have to be a part of the project cost for that connection, however that was paid for.
So if we take the proposal into consideration, allowing the stormwater pond to be in what is considered that right-of-way easement, do we have to make consideration for that at this time, or is that
So,
something that can be
yeah,
handled?
there's really no way to hold, there would be
Yeah.
no way to hold this applicant
Sure.
to
Yep.
be responsible for some unknown date.
I mean,
So it would
city-
be,
would we have to specify resident or city? No, we don't
no,
need to.
because it may even, if it's developer driven, it might
Okay.
be the cost of the developer who's igniting the change.
So we could just have a discussion about whether we're comfortable with the stormwater ponding being in the right-of-way easement, and that could be the end of our discussion for right now. Talking about, and you indicated that is something the staff is willing to consider.
Well, yeah, we could definitely split it between now and council.
Okay. All right, is there anyone else who has discussion that wants to take this in a different direction?
Well, no, I have a couple of questions though. Number one is, do we have an overlay that shows the wetlands overlaid at the top of the development? And do we have an overlay that also shows a development like on top of the Maplewood Basswood community?
So, the preliminary plat does show the wetland boundaries. It might be a little hard to see, it looks like our printer wasn't great.
Yeah, I did see that, and I didn't, I know that's what it is, but it's just not real clear on, when you lay the development on top of that, it would be really beneficial, at least to me, to know where how those wetlands are affected with the development. And the same with the Basswood and the Maplewood,
Yeah, so
community.
Yeah, so the Basswood Maplewood, that's,
The red.
yeah, that's indicated where the tree preservation areas are shown. Go ahead.
I think you had an aerial.
Do you have an
Yeah,
aerial?
if you have an
aerial.
aerial in there, I can kind of point out what we're doing, just to help you out a little bit. For the trees, we are proposing no tree cutting. Everything we're doing is out in the field.
Okay.
So we are not proposing any tree removal. We are gonna do some tree preservation areas for stormwater credits with the watershed district. But we aren't proposing any tree removals. The wetlands have been a little bit more exciting on this. There's a lot of wetlands. We've got a nice little S-curve in our road when we come in. All right, so yeah, there we go. So our road's gonna come in pretty close, there's an approach out there right now, pretty close to that approach. We're gonna come in and swing around this set of wetlands, come down, and our cul-de-sac is about in this area. So the homes are gonna sit approximately here, 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 and then across the road over here. And then this home, this is another little wetland down here. We've got some septic staked out over uphill from there, and that home is shown on our plan out here in the field. Now, that doesn't mean that they couldn't build somewhere else. That there is a finger of land here that is high enough. We didn't do any septic testing. Our septics are here. So we're showing this house kind of on the side hill here, facing back to the north. And then this is that little crossing I was talking about in this area. So that's kind of what we're doing. So there's a wetland complex here that flows into this wetland, which flows into this, which gets into the creek. And then obviously you can see all of this wetland. This almost this whole bottom is wetland down here. And there's a wetland in here. But out in the middle of here, there are no wetlands in the middle where we're developing.
Understood. Perhaps that's more of a question of, or something directed at staff for the future, because again, I really like to understand where those things are and how the development impacts that, the property.
Okay,
But I'll have
yeah.
some other,
I'm sorry, well, maybe we'll have to talk offline on what exactly you're looking for, because I don't create the plans, so I don't.
I understand that.
Okay, so
But
I
perhaps
don't,
we can communicate that to the developer?
it would be a change in city code.
Yeah, next time, right?
Yeah, it would be
Sure.
a change in city code in terms of requiring a new type of plan, so we'd have to change the subdivision ordinance, so we can certainly talk about that, but as far as requiring it,
We
have
can
some
certainly talk
ability-
about
yeah.
that offline.
yeah, or after the meeting.
I don't want to take up time tonight to do that. but-
It doesn't look like it's impacting any of the trees or the wetlands, other than the bridge across for the driveway.
It really isn't. It's an alfalfa field right now is what it's been.
Yeah, the
this-
front part is
Yep.
high.
I'm the property, just, you've got our neighbors live right up top, right off 10, and I'm the one right down there. So with the two little ponds and the barn, second down from 10
To the
east of the property. Yeah.
Oh,
So it isn't. It's all being put up in the high ground where the off is, and they're leaving everything else alone, which is wise because otherwise you would have water issues. You start removing trees, and then you end up with more water issues. So
Okay.
Madam Chair,
yes, sir.
if I may,
Sure.
I'm a neighbor also, lived out there 17, 18 years, and your maps and the things you're requesting, the placement of everything is very, very much a preserve of all of the wetlands and everything. A couple of the spots that are identified as wetlands, 17 years ago, 16, 15 years ago, it used to be farm field. They've just turned into wetlands and now they've been identified that way. And those are the two little spots closer to the house that's existing. It's neat to hear not any tree or anything will be touched other than preserved. So
Understood.
I'm downstream from the creek. I've got all kinds of other issues related to drainage and stuff like that as Madam Chair spoke. We're trying to fix some drain fields so we can drain some more of this property. But it's a nice layout in my mind as a neighbor, and you guys are having a great conversation. Thank you for letting me speak, Madam Chair.
If you have more.
Yeah, I do have more questions. So, we are requiring landscaping for the pole barn, is that correct?
Yes, as a condition of approval, they would have to meet, either provide a tree survey showing that they have trees and shrubs that meet the requirement, or provide, where it doesn't meet the requirement, add those additional trees.
And if we grant the variance for the residents, will that also trigger landscaping for that?
One of the conditions of the variance was to make sure that there's landscaping in compliance with
Okay.
that clause, yes.
And the lighting that's required, is that the burden of the developer?
Yes, it's my understanding from speaking with the Public Works Director, the utility company is the one that actually puts it in, but the cost is the developer.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Okay.
And if there was any way I thought that I would win with public safety, I would request that that not be put in. But I'm going to lose every time.
Yeah.
So, anyone else? Or do you
Yeah.
have more?
No,
Are
go
you
ahead.
good? Oh, okay. I guess I have a question. Are you thinking an exclusive developer or open to?
Donovan DeMarais, part of Sky Summit. They'll be exclusive, closed build.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
I love this, and I feel like it'd be a great neighborhood to live in. I am like excited about this. This looks very cool. And I know you care about drainage,
Yeah.
so you're not gonna mess this up. I know that.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So I'm Phil Corcoran, I'm co-developer here with Donovan DeMarais. I'm also owner of JPC Custom Homes on Buffalo, so we'll be the exclusive builder here. We're currently building in Corcoran in that Bechtold Farms community. We're exclusive builder there as well. So, won't have any issues with drainage or, anything like that. We don't want issues either.
I guess maybe you can't promise or anything, but would this be like an HOA situation or not?
Probably no HOA, we'll have some covenants, architectural committee, between Donovan and myself, but, it's rural, so we wanna give people flexibility, but same time, we want it to look nice, even with the existing house, we've had some inquiries, as far as the sale of the existing home, and we've chosen to not move forward with them because we didn't feel it'd be a good fit, for the neighbors.
That was actually going to be my question, only because I have all the neighbors in that area had expressed concern because Bechtold Farms is in the when the listing went up, it indicated no unsightly farm animals. And I just wanted to make sure that you are aware that there are cows right across the street. There are horses abutting most of those, well, two of the properties that way, then there's still two multi-generational dairy farms. So the request was, they want to make sure that whoever's moving into this neighborhood is aware that whether or not they themselves own unsightly farm animals, there are unsightly farm animals that live in this area.
Right.
And there are roosters crowing, there are hogs doing what hogs do. So that was the only concern that I heard from immediate neighbors. And then also just concern about, but once the preliminary plats came out with the house placement, there was just some concern about, like, obviously don't walking up to the fencing and feeding other people's animals. But that's on the individual homeowner to indicate that they would hang signs. So if there's no HOA, because there is an HOA with the Bechtold Farms neighborhood, so that was going to be my follow-up question. Was it just because the size was smaller that there was going to be a little bit more flexibility from that, because it just didn't make the same sense to create a neighborhood covenant with just so few homes?
Yeah, we've been pretty open to having this be really little to no restrictions here at all, but just to maintain the authenticity and the value of everyone's investment to choose to live here. You know, we kind of have a certain caliber of home requirement, which is
Sure.
governed within the Architecture Control Committee, like specs for the homes that are going to go there. So they're all going to be nice homes, you know, package lot and home structures starting at probably $1 million on the floor, and if some's in the mid $1 millions to $2 million, it wouldn't surprise me. We have never restricted and planned to not have animals here, so part of the reason it's smaller and being the nature of the property does have other hobby farm setups and stuff around there. It's a matter of, we've been telling people go to the city and reference the city code regarding how many animal units they can have per the amount of acres that they have. So they're gonna be able to do that. They wanna have whatever the city allows, they're gonna be able to do.
Okay. And then I just had one other question, and that was, again, Bechtold Farms has a fantastic, beautiful sign. Are you doing any signage with this neighborhood? And the only reason I ask is that Upward Acres is an interesting name. And so I was gonna make a proposal for a second name if you were putting up a neighborhood
Does that
sign.
sound ridiculous?
No, I'm like, call it Basswood Preserve, right? That's what I mean, take it or leave it. I know we don't get to make any sort of recommendation in that way, so this is, I'm not beholding you to anything. But it sounds like if we're not doing HOA, we're probably not doing any sort of neighborhood. We don't need to acknowledge or call out the neighborhood for what it is.
Yeah, in general, we had a lot of dialogue about that, and usually we feel, for our communities we've done like this, usually like the threshold for that is around 10 units of
Okay.
new housing is usually where we justify. You know, you gotta kind of expand your entrance, and you
Yep.
gotta set aside a piece, and I just think, we want it almost to tuck in here like it's always been there and not really flash that it's something that's new and shiny. Eventually, because people can have outbuildings and they can have, we want it to eventually just kind of blend in and almost be like, oh, this has been here a while. Versus when we kind of brandish that fancy new monument on the front, we kind of feel like we're flashing, like, come in. They're not gonna want people to come into there, you know, it's gonna be the 5 people that access to the cul-de-sac and that's it.
Perfect.
Madam
I
Chair,
have
real
more.
quick, you spoke about unsightly animals and stuff. It is quite odoriferous at certain times of the year also. You guys are aware. It will kill paint, and I'm a neighbor across the street, and that's just fresh air to me. Please let your residents know there will be smells sometime. So,
Wanna raise on farms?
I have a couple more.
I'll mention that too when I'm up on the dais too, but neat idea.
Yeah, it just creates future good neighbor relationships, is I think all we're ultimately hoping for in
Those
that.
farms
Yeah.
have been around a long time, and I still get calls from residents that have been out there 25, 30 years asking, what am I gonna do about smell? And I'm telling them nothing, and it's a good time for you to move if you don't like the smell. Welcome to Corcoran. So
And I know the people on the north side of the road, the dairy farm.
Yeah.
you're all over it.
Very, very well built, actually, a couple of homes on the north side of the road, so we know that paying extremely well, and that is something we point out, that it's, in here in rural, you know, rural country, so it's, you're gonna get the smells, and it is what it is.
The other feedback from the neighbors, and then I'll let Commissioner Lynn speak too, is that they are excited about the idea that it just is tucked back in there. It isn't anything flashy, it isn't anything grand. So all of that to say, no one is not grateful for what the plan that is going in there, at least what's been communicated to me, so.
Yeah, love to hear about the animals, that's great. I think I don't have any more questions, just a couple thoughts. In a right-of-way situation, who maintains that for the 50 years before it's real? becomes a road?
In an easement situation.
Sorry, easement.
So typically, right of way, like you mow your lawn typically to the curb or to the edge of the street. So typically, like you're maintaining that part, and if it's not, if the homeowner is typically doing that maintenance. As far as if it's a street easement, then it would really be up to the property owner, because technically that's still their land. We would just have a street easement over it. But the stormwater ponding typically goes to, we'll have a drainage utility easement over it in case we do need to access it to address anything. But typically, again, it's either the property owner or an HOA that's handling the long-term stormwater maintenance.
Okay. And then I like the idea of the financial security. Wonder if that could even just be a policy or an idea for a policy at some point. Like, anyway, and so I guess, I don't know, how do we all feel about the right-of-way piece or the easement?
Right, so I think that I think it's a worthwhile proposal, to still allow the idea that, a street could make that connection, because I think it is important, and I'm not saying this just because I live to the east, but because I live to the east, there is no way you're gonna get a feasible road in that way unless you are doing a ton in that area. So all of that to say, it makes the most sense to go to the west, and I think it makes the most sense to plan. But if the compromise can be made that we would allow a stormwater pond to be built in that right of way, and that's something that the city is comfortable with, I'm happy to make that recommendation to council. I think the benefit of doing that is it doesn't start to feel like someone's yard either, right? Which sometimes if you're in a right, like an easement scenario, you're like using that as your yard, that sort of become like you're mowing to that point, and now all of a sudden the city comes in and is like, well, we're gonna put this road, or development comes in, and not the city, but development comes and now the right of way needs to be made. But if it's a stormwater pond, it's just holding water anyway, nobody's really doing anything in that point, and then that just moves from there to becoming part of the road.
And the developer is responsible for moving that pond or whatever needs to happen.
I would assume
That's up to
so.
date.
I think it's very reasonable.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if we need it at all.
Need the right of way, or the easement.
It may never be used, but you might as well just put it in there and allow
Yeah.
them to have their pond, and that way
Madam Chair,
chances are it'll.
Yes.
just real quick, Natalie, don't we have one that has kind of popped up of Hunter's
A public
Ridge
street.
up on the end?
A
The
request.
easement-
Oh,
The easement that's up there and the pond that's there, and at some point the road will come in, you know what I'm talking about,
Oh.
up in Hope.
yeah, I don't know if there's a stormwater pond in there. I'll have to look, but yeah, I don't think the request is unheard of. I think it'd be something that we want to explore, and I think basically, what the recommendation could be, is that if city engineering can handle a compromise of the stormwater ponding being in a street easement or right of way, then in that scenario, we can have that as a condition. But if that's not, if it's either or, then the recommendation is to not have the easement, something like that.
Yes,
That would cover.
I like it.
Okay, so then, are you willing to make a motion?
Oh, okay, yeah. I don't know if it's a stormwater pond, but yeah, they built into that area. So
Yeah.
That's where yeah.
That's the one I was referring to.
Yeah.
Do you want to make a
I make a motion to approve the
resolution?
plat, the resolution?
Yeah, there's two resolutions.
There's a preliminary plat and a variance.
Okay. To approve the preliminary plat and variance as discussed with the conditions discussed and changes.
I'll second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Right, thank you.
Nice.
Thank you for the
gonna be
proposal, it's
nice.
nice to hear a solution.
I like it.
Okay, and then the next thing that we have is a public hearing for the Conservation Residential Park Dedication and RSF 1 and RSF 2 ordinance amendments.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any of the picture of the class?
You could have my packet.
All right.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome.
The first the second item tonight is a couple of city code amendments to account for a change made on March 28th of this year. The city council approved the creation of a new land use category within our comprehensive plan called conservation residential. This land use category will allow new development within our metropolitan urban service area, MUSA, at a density of 2 to 3 units per acre. But there, while I was able to make one code amendment when that change went through, I found 3 more shortly afterwards that needed to be accounted for, so that's what we're taking care of tonight. So the first amendment is within our subdivision ordinance. The park dedication table is by land use category, and conservation residential is not called out. And so we've added that, as well as updated the density accordingly, our associated density accordingly to our low density residential category. So at this time, staff is proposing that the conservation residential development have the same park dedication requirement as low density residential development, because this area is within the MUSA, and our park dedication fees have all been calculated based on that percentage of land being provided. So it would be something further evaluated as part of a larger update when we're ready to talk about the percentage of land reevaluation as well as our park dedication fees. But this kind of gives us a Band-Aid approach as we see some of these final plats start coming in. The second and third section are just to our district standards within the MUSA for single families. So we have section 1040.40, which is our RSF1, just clarifying that conservation residential areas can develop to the RSF1 standards. And then same with our RSF2 standards, section 1040.045. And there's a slight typo in there, lovely. But open. So the recommendation at this time is to open the public hearing and take testimony. As you can tell, we have a full run. Staff recommends approval of the draft ordinance with those 3 sections amended, and then there's a draft resolution with the findings of fact in support of this change.
Thank you, Natalie. All right, at this time, we'll open the public hearing for anybody who wants to make public comment, of which there is no one in this room, but we will give it a short wait. And then we'll go ahead and I'll just make a motion to close the public hearing. Anyone want a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, and then is there any discussion that anyone wants to have around this, or any questions that you have? Otherwise, if not, okay,
I do.
go ahead, Commissioner.
Okay, so, sorry, I was looking at my notes. So RSF2 as well as RSF1. And if this question is, I'm just kind of like, I guess let me ask it this way. Does zoning it, does allowing it within RSF2 on a policy level encourage developers in our community to develop with smaller lots? Does it encourage that behavior?
No, this change, if anything, is going to allow them to develop with larger lots. Because this is a lower density land use category than the low density residential. So low density residential is 3 to 5 units per acre. Conservation residential is 2 to 3 units per acre.
But RSF1 versus RSF2.
RSF1, well, keep in mind this is already called out as an allowed land use category in RSF3, which is the smallest lot sizes. So it makes sense that it would also be allowed in RSF2, which has slightly larger lots than RSF3,
Yep.
and then same with RSF1. So and right now we haven't seen any standard plat come under RSF1 or RSF2 because they can't meet the density requirements under low density residential.
I just thought we just approved some going RSF2.
That was RSF3.
Oh.
Yep.
Okay. 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 And then, okay, I understand now your explanation on, I was gonna say, should we require, like, 7% park dedication, right?
Yeah.
Like strike it in the middle a little
Yes,
bit?
that was discussed. The concern is, again, our fees that are calculated in
Yeah.
our fee schedule have been based, it factors in, it was a formula that I was not a part of, so I'm not the person to ask, and the person that did it no longer works here, it was our previous city administrator. But she went through very extensively all the available land, all of the potential density associated with it, in order to land at the percentages, which then in turn determine our fee. And so because this area is within the MUSA and it was projected to develop a certain way, that's how we got that percentage and our ultimate underlying fee that each unit has to pay. And so to change it at this point without addressing our overall fee.
Totally get it.
Yeah.
So when the fee structure is addressed,
Yes, when we do.
we'll look at it.
Yeah, it's best practice to do it on an annual basis, so we're overdue for it. This is just, I know that the final plat is coming, and so we have to adjust it now. And they're prepared to pay the park dedication fee, because when they went through parks, I did it based on the current table with low-density residential. So they've been prepared for that fee, so.
But moving forward, it could come out to be, when it's reassessed, it could come
Yeah.
out to be a more.
It could be a little different, yeah.
Rate.
It could be.
Or
Yep, okay.
reasonable.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank
So-
you.
anybody else? No, okay. So then I'll make a motion to approve the ordinance number 2024. Oh, do we need to say them all?
Yeah, you could just say the draft ordinance.
And the fact of finding,
Yeah,
right?
and draft resolution, yeah.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. And so then next up, we have the staff report for the Shoreland Overlay Zoning Ordinance Amendment, City File 24-022.
Perfect. Yep, so this is our last public hearing tonight. It is a zoning ordinance amendment for our Shoreland Overlay District. The city was made aware of the need to add 2 natural environment lakes to the text of our district ordinance. And it was in a letter from the Minnesota DNR from last July. The proposed amendment will meet the requirement and it will be in compliance with the timeline provided by the DNR in that letter. So it's 2 water bodies, so it's Cook Lake, both the north and south segments. This lake, the shoreline for this lake is actually already shown on our text, our zoning map, it just wasn't included in the text of our ordinance. So it's just clearly identifying that moving forward. And then the second the shoreland is an unnamed lake in Rogers, and the shoreland does extend past the Rogers-Corcoran border along County Road 117 and west of Trailhaven Road. The shoreline for this body of water is not shown on our current zoning map. This one was news to us. And so this, once this is approved, staff will then put it on our work plan to have the zoning map updated accordingly. And so the zoning ordinance amendment's really quick. It's, the major thing was changing from the protected water ID to what's now called the DNR Public Waters ID, which is slightly different numbering. So that was updated for all our natural environment lakes. And then adding the Cook Lake North, Cook Lake South, and then the unnamed body of water in the legal description. And so at this time, we should open the public hearing and take testimony. And then we recommend approval as staff as outlined for draft ordinance amending section 1050.20 and the draft resolution with findings of fact.
Okay, and so we'll go ahead and open that public hearing, and again, just note that no one is in the chambers to address the commission or come to the podium. So with that, we will also then close the public hearing. I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and so then, is there any discussion or questions regarding this zoning ordinance amendment?
No.
What does it affect?
Yeah, that's what my question is. Exactly what is the impact of this?
For the city.
We are doing what the DNR told us to do by the deadline so that we are not in compliance with our shoreline overlay.
Okay.
So.
And so it's just,
So the shoreline, so because Cook Lake, pretty much everything around it has been developed at this point, that really doesn't really affect it too much other than people who are building accessory structures might have some additional standards that they need to consider. It doesn't really impact development applications at this point. And then for the unnamed lake, in, along County Road 117, that theoretically could affect someone trying to develop that area or build a home in that area. They'll have an impervious surface limit and a height limit, but I think it's fairly minimal impact, because for the most part, we're treating Cook Lake as a natural environment lake. We're just memorializing that in the text, and it's a very small area within Corcoran from the Rogers Lake.
Okay, it doesn't cause the city to go back to someone to make corrections or anything like that, does it?
No.
I mean, it looks like a wetland area, basically, the unnamed lake, so
Yeah.
we probably have the same restrictions as a wetland.
It can be a little, it's very similar. There's a height limit and impervious surface limit that the wetland doesn't, but yeah, it's very similar.
Okay, so with that, we'll just make a motion to approve the city file number 24-022 and the draft resolutions and facts, findings of fact, findings.
I second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and then our next up is the commercial and industrial update.
Yes, thank you, Madam.
Revisiting the table.
Yes, I wasn't too sure if we wanted to approach the subject once more. I just figured I wanted to circle back to make sure that any comments that you maybe have come up since the joint work session or weren't shared at the joint work session, if you wanted to give me any feedback, I can quickly jot that down. We don't need to spend a whole bunch of time on this if we don't want to. It's more just to make sure that we have a consensus as to where we stand on that. This will not be our last time to talk about task 3. Right now, next month, we will move forward with a public hearing to remove storage, self-storage uses from our commercial and industrial districts. So that's coming in July. We are currently underway with the rural commercial subdivision survey. It's a bit of a tongue twister.
Yeah.
But that is currently underway. We're collecting responses. The feedback from that is anticipated to go to council June 27th, and then further direction for task 1 will be provided at that point. And then the idea has been once task 1 and task 2 are tied up in a pretty bow, then we can switch gears and really move forward with task 3. There is some talk about requesting a special work session with council to do a mobile tour to some business park industrial areas, so we can kind of get an idea of what we want for our vision. And so I'm sure we will invite the planning commission to that as well. And that could be as soon as July, depending on what the council decides at their next meeting. But yeah, so there's definitely things in motion, but you don't have to feel like this is your last chance. It's more just regrouping after the work session.
And would the tour be the Birchville area?
It's
or
actually
some of the
going to be,
industrial
yeah, it's
also?
actually going to be probably, there might be some existing Corcoran areas, but it's actually more
Outside of it.
looking at other areas that have already developed under business park standards versus light industrial standards. So you can see what the market currently has to offer and what do we like, what do we don't like, and actually be able, it's really different to scale when you're out. Sometimes there's only so much you get from looking at pictures. And so it's a chance to maybe just get out in the field and
To look
help
at
us build a
neighboring
vision.
suburbs
Yeah.
and what they've done recently.
That was actually gonna be my follow-up, is based on the concept plan that was proposed before council the night following that work session. I think there needs to be some clarity around the business park design standards in particular, because there is only one area zoned in Corcoran, and I think we need to get it right. And it seemed like there were some feelings about, or some sense that it should be more specifically one way than the actual explanation called out. So I think that would be helpful, even maybe arriving at metrics or measurables that says this percentage is this type, and then we can call it what it is. So that was gonna be my first comment. I feel bad because I feel like every time we talk about this, I make it more confusing rather than bringing any clarity. So I did go through, and the only thing that came up to me well, I have a couple, but my question is, in so many areas, we have conditional uses rather than just permitted uses. And can you help me understand why that is a benefit for the city rather than just having more permitted uses?
Yes, I can. So so the thinking behind that is it gives the city some discretion to say, this lot, when it's a permitted use, if they're able to comply with all their standards,
They can
there's
build
no
it.
variances, they can build it. Typically, they'll still have to do a site plan, so we do have a chance to see it and confirm that it does comply. But there is no discretion. We can't add any contingencies like, okay, well, you can go, but really we're concerned about the impact to the neighbors to the west, so we'd like you to put up some trees to mitigate that impact. A conditional use permit does give you that ability so you typically see it for uses that, it's still, so the thing with conditional uses is they are still permitted, allowable uses. It's just that recognizing that it may be a type of use where additional stipulations may be needed to mitigate the impact. So it should be reserved for uses that are going to potentially have more impact. It should not be there are some cities where they'll have districts where everything's a conditional use permit, and that provides them, I think, with the discretion that they would like to have in some areas. But as a general rule of thumb, it does add an additional layer of review, an additional deposit, additional fee that can be, it starts to add up, especially for small businesses. So you don't want to necessarily do that for every use. But something like a gas station with a car wash, something like that, like it probably makes sense to have it to be a conditional use because it might not make sense on every site within that district.
Okay, so then the one of the things that I noticed then when reviewing through the table is there seems to be like this discretion between, so I think there was one that was like a retail shoe, like a shoe repair. I'm like, oh my gosh, this seems very specific to call out, first of all. But then there seems to be this desire to have like commercial 1 be those walkable distance, so not very large, but then also commercial 2 being those where other travelers are coming, so there's gonna be higher traffic. Why would we not permit a shoe repair store to exist in both of those commercials, but then like commercial districts, but just have the difference be the size of the store? Like, couldn't you have a small owned business that's a shoe repair that is a walkable, drop off your shoes, very small store with a counter and then a small workspace in the back, but you could also have something that's like quite large. So it was called out in one district and not in the other, and I just wondered how many other retail things do we do that with, where it would make more sense, instead of restricting it to one district over the other, to allow both in both districts, but maybe do what we do for the commercial, which is to put a size restriction on it.
Sure. I think that does make sense. The only unintended consequence of a size restriction is sometimes we don't quite get the numbers right. And then why is 10,000 square feet okay, but 10,001 square feet isn't? And so it can seem arbitrary at times. And I know like we have a
Commercial recreation and entertainment.
Yeah,
Yep,
and
that's the
so-
one that I noticed. Like you
Yeah.
could put a Top Golf or a Sky Zone
Yeah.
in the commercial rural, but right now, according to this, you could not put it anywhere else.
Right, and I think with that commercial recreation, if you look at what kind of small gyms there are, it's not gonna, like this, what C1 would allow, it's too restrictive.
Okay.
So that would be the concern, is sometimes when you identify that hard limit, which I'm not opposed to, it's just making sure that it's flexible enough too. So maybe it's permitted when it's less than that, and then more than that, it would be a conditional use permit, so that we do have some ability to be like, okay, well, 10,001 does make sense on this site, that's silly. So maybe something like that would be a compromise to try to call that out.
Or if there's a different way to do it that would meet sort of the intent behind why we would want this size or type of, I'm saying we're calling out a type when it seems like the use should not be the distinguishing factor between those two zones. It's more the
Architectural standards.
correct.
Yeah.
And so that's why I was like, it doesn't make, because I could see a shoe repair or shoe whatever sale store existing in both of those districts, so it seems silly to allow it in one and not allow it in the other, just by use, but a different standard.
And I think this also can speak to the fact that sometimes when you finally get something adopted, how quickly the market can change where it's irrelevant.
Right.
Because I can't remember the last time I saw a shoe repair store. I think when I worked as a pizza delivery driver in Minneapolis, there was a shoe repair store across the Pizza Hut I used to work at. But that's like the only one I've ever seen.
Well, and we're talking, we can't just lump retail, right? Like, we can't be that general.
No, we can. We could lump it and then, so that what we have to be careful of if we lump it, and then we want to call out some specific retail uses, because we decided that that's different than the general retail use. I think if we do that, we really do need to move to some sort of table in the code, because otherwise it becomes unclear, like, okay, well, we do allow it here, why don't we allow it here? Was that an oversight, or do we intentionally say we don't want that here?
Yeah.
So we just need to make sure it's consistent verbiage being used in all districts.
So I have a question. It says retail goods and service uses of a similar nature. Similar to what? What
So
does
it's
that
saying
mean?
retail or service of a similar nature to retail is what that's saying.
Oh,
Are we,
So, go ahead.
no, I'm sorry, finish.
So basically, I think if, under that, if we didn't have shoe repair called out separately somewhere, retail and similar services would fall under retail.
yeah, so
So,
retail
yeah.
seems pretty broad then.
Yeah.
What I noticed too is I did take the survey and there were slightly different uses under the survey where it said, which of these do you approve or not?
They were just
approve?
asking for feedback on which ones should be allowed in that area.
Yeah, so I took all the commercial rural and then I added a few that have been kind of under discussion.
Are we
Right.
opening this agenda item and like going into feedback and edits on that, or are we?
We
not?
are, I think what we're doing, because there's no public hearing on this, and so what we're just doing is saying, because this is what we talked about at the work session. So
Yep.
if there's anything else that came out that you want to add, that can be added to discussion,
Okay.
just another touch point. Not final time we're gonna talk about it, but just another touch point to, as you read through it again, did anything else come up?
Okay, so don't have to repeat any of the feedback from before. I do feel like, and the working session was valuable. It was great to spend time with council. I feel like we don't get those opportunities often, well, at least, I think I've been on this for like a little over a year. And that was the first one I've had, probably because I wasn't able to make the other ones. For my fault, but, I did feel like the task of this seems daunting for everyone. It seems like I could feel it on both sides of the table of like, we're playing Sims, we're playing like Zoo Tycoon, and it's hard to do. And so I agree that it should be thoughtfully, and the vision exercise, like going out seems amazing. Love that idea, and like simplifying this. So I just want to say I'm super supportive of that, of like taking our time and building the vision, because I feel like we all felt very daunted by it. And it, I don't want it to hustle through to just make some updates. Like, this is, I'm not saying that's what's happening. I'm just saying this is a really good opportunity for us to work together and do it right. So I look forward to those opportunities.
Just real quick, if I may, Madam Chair.
Sure.
This is an ever-evolving type thing.
Yeah,
This is not gonna be set in stone. We're gonna get all done in 3 or 4 years. We're gonna have a bunch of new people that are gonna need it. Y'all are gonna have different ideas as this city changes over the next 60 years before it gets out to the western border. Just as other cities, Crystal used to be the Corcoran, and everything has evolved from there. So don't be disappointed when all of a sudden it's like, well, we just put this in the ordinance 2 years ago and it's not fitting into our plan
Sure.
now. Be
Yeah.
flexible, please, but also be outspoken too. It means a lot to me, and I know the rest of the folks on the council and the mayor. We want as many people bringing up ideas as we possibly can. The survey is fantastic, I think. I don't know how many good comments I get from citizens and residents out there that's really cool. Well, it's helping us do stuff. So they just like, why are you doing this? That's a long story. But the people that want this city to continue being what it is and understanding that things are going to change a little at a time, it was a good survey. I wanted those compliments
That is
in
so
here at
much
one
work, so
point.
I'm so happy to hear
It
that.
is very noticed, and not one person has said, what a waste of time. So thank you guys very much.
Well, what I appreciated about the survey was the slideshow informational slideshow put together, because I think the frustration for residents is they want to provide good feedback, but they often don't have the months of understanding that people who are involved in issues have. And so I thought that that was really well done, and I know it added a lot of time. But I think in order to be able to speak knowledgeably, you have to know what the issue is. And especially pertaining to that issue, I think it was super necessary to have all of the background information that you guys gave. So, and I know lots of people have been grateful that they have the opportunity to provide input. So I hope you guys see that reflected in the number of people who take it. You had a question, sir?
Me?
Yes.
Yes. The last time we talked about this, there was a comment made about reformatting the information in a different way, so that, I mean, right now you look at it and you have the various categories, and then you have the various things where those categories fit into, and it's all over the place. I know some of the national codes condense that information or group it differently, where it's a little bit easier to read what's in what category.
Yeah, so I think I would like to see a use of tables, much more simplified than what this is. Part of what the problem with this is just because all of a sudden one is called out slightly different in a different district. So I think there's room to definitely make it much more viewable. But I think that would be an area where other city codes have a use of table, so that we don't have 60 pages of just reiterating similar or slightly differentiated uses. So I think that'd be one area where we can simplify our code, and I think that actually would simplify most districts, because that's, I would say, the bulk of our district standards is going through the uses.
Sounds like your plate's getting fuller.
But
You're over, kid.
but yeah, so I think there's definitely areas like that, and then we can definitely look at formatting across different formatting options as we go through this.
I'd be more than happy to help if there's a way I could help, so.
Keep that in mind, thank you.
And then I just had two other specific questions about the accessory buildings and structures for use to the principal, commercial, or business. Why is that, or is there an example that you could give that would help me understand why we would allow that in the business park district?
Accessory building for use accessory to the principal commercial. As an administrative thing. So sometimes there's like a need for like a garage or a shed or things like that. I'm trying to think of a specific example and I'm blanking, because typically warehousing, something like
Right.
that, it's covered within
Right.
the building, but maybe it's a slightly different setup it's allowing for, but I think you're right, it would be unusual.
Or is
in
this
business
like,
park.
I was wondering, is it the type of thing where it's like they're gonna do like a walking area for employees and it's got a gazebo? Like, is that considered accessory, like, or is that something different than what I'm imagining?
I feel like that theoretically could cover it. I would hope a gazebo for some recreational space would be allowed regardless of that.
Right.
But I suppose if there was some pushback, someone could point to that, saying that, yeah, an accessory structure for my employees is allowed. So, so theoretically, I can ask Kendra to see if she has any more feedback on that. But I think you're right. And as far as business park, you don't typically see.
Right, that's why,
accessory
and
buildings.
I was confused by that, yeah, because it's not, and obviously in industrial you wouldn't see it, and commercial you wouldn't typically see it, but business park just seemed to me that seems rather, the other direction from sort of an upscale office retail space to allow that.
I do know in our light industrial, like our current light industrial area, there are
Accessory structures.
businesses with accessory storage structures, yeah.
And so even though on here, because obviously it's only, and I guess this was just a question of how the table was laid out. So it's allowed in the industrial, light industrial, so, but it doesn't need to be on here indicating that it's a permitted use. So just because it's on the chart, it's not saying it, doesn't mean that it's not permitted in that area.
Well, and just keep in mind, so there's, to his point, with it being super complicated, there is our accessory structure section of codes somewhere else.
Right.
And I believe there's like, if it's a non-residential district, they get 1,000 square feet or something like that. So I think
Right.
what this is saying is it could be more than the 1,000 that's allowed by code.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think that's maybe what it's coming from, but as far as why would the business park use it and not the
Okay.
light industrial, I don't have a good answer for you right now.
But I hear what you're saying. So the actual city code is calling out where it's allowed. Then this table is saying something which may or may not then reflect what that city code is saying. So in order to get the full picture, you have to look all of these areas.
Yeah, you need, I have a very secure job right now.
Right, right. Okay, so then, so that actually helps in answering my question, which was the accessory dwelling unit not exceeding 960 square feet and this is administrative permit in the commercial rural and the transitional commercial rural. And I was saying, is that even necessary at this point in time with the new accessory dwelling update?
Right, so that is one of my questions too, in terms of the rural commercial. I think the idea was to theoretically allow like a live-work unit. So if it's, as long as it was accessory to a, like a retail, then why wouldn't we allow that? I mean, that is typically something you see in smaller communities and old-style downtowns.
Yep.
So I think that was the reason why it was originally in the rural commercial
Okay.
area. And then, yeah, so I think that would be why we would want to keep it, or I think that's why it was, was established. And then as far as whether or not we think that continues to make sense is definitely up for debate, so.
Okay, but it would not be just null and void with the new changes we've made to the accessory dwelling unit ordinances through the city code.
The changes we made
Did not.
apply to the rural commercial as well.
Right, so then is that necessary? I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Like, does one now, okay.
No, okay, so when we made those changes to the accessory, we had to go district by district by
Yep.
district by district. So I don't think it makes it.
So we did not then touch these two.
No, we did touch these two. Remember, it used to be an interim use permit,
Yeah,
and
yep,
then
and now
we
we
changed it to admin permit. Yeah, so that's,
So then,
I'm confused, I'm sorry. So right now it's as an admin permit, so those are reflecting the changes we made.
oh, okay.
Okay,
Okay.
all right, awesome, I'm sorry.
No, okay, so it's not a straight, I gotcha, yep, okay. That answers my question fully, and I apologize. See, every time I review it, I just make it more confusing.
No, it's fine. It's good to realize where things aren't making sense, so, because I'm sure you're not the only person confused by what is going on in our code, so.
I guess the one thing that kind of confuses me about this too is how do you determine what you want in the commercial rural, transitional commercial rural versus your downtown? I mean, could some of these exist in both?
So in my
that
personal
aren't really
opinion,
here?
I think the difference is traffic. For
So
me,
like
a lot of times,
walkability,
like, I don't
or-
want to be necessarily, so because rural, commercial rural, and transitional commercial rural do not have city water, city sewer, they need well and septic. So then, I think that sometimes in and of itself says, okay, maybe a bakery doesn't make the most sense because they're gonna be using a lot of water, or some of them.
Or a car wash.
A car wash can't hold, the well can't support that or what have you. But then I think also, in because of that, it requires a different land size a lot of times in order to accommodate a well. And so then would it make sense to have some of these smaller businesses that you would have in your downtown mixed use that can fit because they can have access to that water and sewer hookup? They don't need as large of a lot size. So then to say that it wouldn't make sense to then say that same downtown mixed use or general mixed use could also make sense on a larger
Yeah,
plot
I
outside.
figured that's probably what it was.
If there's anything else to add, but I think that some of the, and then walkability, the downtown mixed use and the general mixed use are supposed to be encouraging, those are where the high density multifamily housing are, and so then it's supposed to encourage this idea of being able to walk to work or walk to get your things done, and I don't think that would make sense in the commercial
The
rural.
one thing in the commercial rural that I thought would make sense would be like the farmer's market. Because it's usually a big space. I mean, people are just coming and putting up a stand. There's really not any utilities required for it. And there's a lot of people out in the rural commercial area who have gardens, who grow, who would You could put it along County Road 19 by the Public Works Building, and it would be on people's way to St. Michael or something like that too, because that's a well-traveled road. They could just zip in, get their stuff, zip out. Actually, right down on 55 and 19, if you're coming, west from 55, you could turn right into there and then head out north on 19. And I always wished there was something there when I was working because it would be very convenient. And a lot of people take that route. So that, I think those areas would be ideal for people commuting from their jobs, in Plymouth or city or wherever. Everything was on my way home when I worked, basically, because I lived way out here. So that, or like an agricultural co-op, something like that to support small market farms. I guess I'd really love to see, everybody talks about Corcoran retaining their rural identity and culture and things like that, but how are we gonna make that happen? One way to make it happen would be to make it affordable for farmers, young farmers, to come in to buy or lease property, maybe lease with the ability to own it later on, and then have somewhere to sell, a co-op that supports them, a deal with the school so they can provide fresh food to the school, something like that. All these different services that could support that. And it would be kind of unique. It would make Corcoran unique. We don't want to be a Maple Grove. We don't, necessarily want to be a Rogers with all the big box stores and all the retail and
Madam
things like
Chair,
that.
many of those things are happening now. They just aren't out there in the open. So
Yeah, and that's
there's a number of them out there in the rural side that it's a constant change.
and that's
That's
another
happening.
thing, some way to kind of promote that, not only to promote it within Corcoran, but to promote it to say, hey, you could buy land here and be a small market farmer, and these are the resources that our community would provide you.
That, not so much.
No?
That's set by the market, but there are Trailhaven in 10, there is a farm that's there that you can stop on a Tuesday and get stuff. Just ask the folks. If you stop on a Wednesday, they won't talk to you because they're loading up their trucks to take things to the farmer's market on Thursday. So they're out there, it's just, you
What
gotta
farmer's
kinda know where
market
they
do
are.
they bring it to?
Downtown,
Oh, downtown, okay.
yeah. So, the stuff is out there, it's just the affordable farmland and stuff, that's a whole nother conversation. There's farmers that don't wanna sell those kind of things, and then tonight you saw a farmer, a change in
Yeah, they're selling
their
to
situation and
developers.
stuff.
He's not, his kids are.
Yeah.
Howard passed away.
Yep, Howard passed, and, the piece of property that the house is on, the shed and everything is a meticulously kept, very nice place. It's gonna fit, but nobody's gonna find that land cheap anywhere, so
Land has
it's
gotten
a
really
lot to
expensive.
go down that road, so.
I will just add one thing, that this table of uses does not take into effect are some of those uses that are allowed in the rural residential. So farms in the rural residential are allowed to do a farm stand, that is a use they can do. And they're even able to bypass some of the sign requirements to be able to advertise for that. Could we do more to make sure that we're encouraging agribusinesses, such as like a winery that wants to do a wine tasting room that doesn't quite fit within our ordinances? I think that that's definitely room for discussion. But that's actually our rural residential district where you're gonna see some of that, because that's where the farming occurs, and they typically wanna do something on site. Which is a little different from the rural commercial area. But I do think that's part of a discussion that we need to have as a city, yes.
Yeah, and the rural commercial would be more businesses that support, farmers, small market farmers or agriculture.
I appreciate your comments and agree.
Okay, does anyone have anything else related to this topic? No? Okay. Well, hopefully we gave you some valuable feedback instead of just being confusing. And then, do we have anything you want to call out specifically under the planning project update?
I don't believe so on my end. We already talked about the survey, and I believe I emailed you all so that you could participate, and please pass the word. Since I had 5 responses on Tuesday, and then I asked Parks Commission and Dwight to work with you, and Jay worked with council to get the word out a bit more, and now I'm up to 15 just 2 days later. So if I would love to get as much participation as possible, so feel free to pass.
And that was for
I
what?
sent it to all my neighbors, so
Okay,
maybe
the
that's
survey.
at least
Yeah.
10 of them. But I tried to post on the Corcoran Gazette Facebook page.
Oh, they don't like me.
They did not accept my post.
Yeah, they don't tend to like anything city staff related, is my understanding, and I could be giving them a hard time, but just from my brief understanding of that group, they're very critical.
I'm trying to,
Send it to me, I'll get it on there.
Okay.
That would be great. And it just says, hey,
I've talked to a number of folks there, and they are, love that, that's where most of the people that love
Yeah.
love the survey that was out there, that's where most of those comments came from that.
Oh, from the Gazette?
Well,
From
yeah.
people that are on it.
The other side of that
Give
that I'm
me
gonna
something, I'll
say
get it sent.
is in the sharing of it, just, it is an issue that needs to be understood. So, like, I'm not trying to say that everybody doesn't have the right to participate in the survey, because everybody should. I just really encourage everybody to read thoroughly
Yes.
through the information given prior to taking the survey.
That is why the link is only accessible
At the
very
end.
end.
Yes, that was intentional.
That was very intentional.
so I asked, so I'm part of Bellwether, right? Community, and so I asked for that to be put on the community feed,
Oh, okay.
Yep.
but I haven't seen it yet.
Okay.
So I'm not sure, there's a lot of politics with getting things on the community
Sure.
feed, so I'm not sure if that's gonna happen, but
Well, I really appreciate it. I really do helping to get the word out there. I know Parks is also putting something laminated at the city park so that it withstands the weather. And we try to put something on our own social media as well, and there'll be one more reminder the Friday before it closes, so.
yeah, I think like a City of Corcoran post that's shareable on Facebook, like
Believe
people
one-
would then,
It's out
I
there.
believe
oh,
it's
it
out
is,
there. Yeah,
sorry,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
perfect.
Yeah, and then you were supposed to receive a link already from Jay. Did you not get that?
I'm hoping to get on my computer
Okay,
tonight when I
okay.
get home.
All right, perfect. So then you should have a link too if you wanted to pass that on.
I'll share.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
How about physical flyers in like a store and a community center?
Yeah, we did, well, so what was mailed as to the 500 feet around, that was what's laminated now at City Park. As far as continuing it, I'm actually like already over budget for the project, so I just have to be.
Cost is,
I don't think you'd have to laminate it. You could put
No,
it
it doesn't need to
in.
be laminated, but actually each time we print something, we get charged because our printers are leased. So there's more cost to it than you'd think.
Yeah, a couple.
we're using all of our free,
Plus staff time
Facebook, everything
on an
else
issue that
is,
wasn't part of the original goal.
we're
Well,
being
the,
cheap.
right in Birchville there would be a good place to put it at that gas station. I don't know what the name of it is even now. It was
Sure.
Storman's, it was Little Jack's. I don't even know what it is right now, and
Yeah.
it's close to my home, but.
Again, the
thought.
cost and publication is high, and we're just using social media to get it out, trying to keep costs down, so.
Because it is a deterrent from the original set of goals that council had for this year, so it's an extra already sort of on top of that, I think. Do you have an update for us?
I don't,
At all?
unless you guys got something, again, I did appreciate the time with, Lindsay, you said that's the first one you've been to. We've opened it up, we all have busy schedules, the volunteers don't get paid much, and those of us that do get paid are still volunteering a lot of our time, but your input is huge. A quick email to the council, a quick email to Jay, he'll share it with us, email to Natalie, she'll share with us your thoughts and ideas. It doesn't have to come out of this meeting to get to us at all.
Does that mean
Please
that-
send it.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Does that mean that every time I communicate with Natalie, she's sharing it with everybody?
No, that,
No.
no, but if you were saying I'd like this to be included as part of the packet, I can certainly do that.
She'll get it in
Yeah.
the packet. And then
That's cool.
we're starting something new in the next few weeks here. We're going to, the council is going to tablets to try and save some of our trees and stuff. And then hopefully next year, it's being talked about, it'd be nice if we could get tablets for you guys to eliminate the 458 page packets and stuff and live updates, those kind of things, but we're starting it with the council first.
I mean, I'd be happy to bring my own tablet too.
I love trees, but I cannot do this on a digital platform. I'm just gonna say, I am a paper person. I
It's
make
easy.
notes.
You'll still
I
be able to
read.
print it up yourself, those kind of things, but we've gotta do something. The last time, the last council meeting, it was one bolt of paper per packet that went out to us, and it's a huge cost. And
Yeah.
to go to tablets, it's a huge savings, but also you can still print it out if you want.
If we
I
go
hear you.
tablets though, would it be something like Acrobat where they have markup tools?
Well, that's what I was about to say, as a part of the update, there's a grant, it's
It's
being rolled out
Granicus.
with Granicus, so there is a note-taking feature.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
So the planning commission at this time, there's no definite rollout of tablets, so I don't think you need to worry about it right now. But you will have access to Granicus, my understanding
Yeah.
is fairly soon, so you can start trying out to see if it's something that's workable.
Or is
Yeah,
the
I
city-
hear you. I just am not
Yeah.
like the amount of time spent staring at screens is just not good for my aging eyes.
Yeah, same.
I'm
It-
gonna be honest, like I'm zooming in and I'm like, I just don't, the same comprehension. But I appreciate it and I'm not unwilling to try new things and I have no expectation that, I'd be accommodated. The one thing I would wanna, and I know it's still gonna be available on the dais, or out of the packet, but I just wanna make sure too, that things remain accessible for every resident who would live here
That'll all
regardless
be
of,
out, that'll still be there.
regardless
Is the
of-
city gonna have to purchase the tablets, or do they already own them?
So there were tablets purchased for council at this point,
Oh.
and the cost of the tablets we're actually gonna save money by not printing the packets anymore.
Oh,
by the
cool.
rest of the year.
Well, cause I work at Microsoft, so, and I know we have like nonprofit and government stuff, so I was
That's good
gonna
to
say,
keep in
if you
mind for
ever
the
wanna
commission.
talk,
cool.
we
Yeah,
have
I'll
tablets.
bring that up with Jay
So
for the commission.
maybe
tablets,
explore
yeah.
that, but if they're already bought, perfect, great.
The ones for the commission definitely have not been bought, so that might be a discussion for next year's
Sure,
budget, so
great.
keep that in mind.
Don't want anybody felt left out. I'm like Corinne, I'd rather have documents, but I'm getting real tired of seeing all these pieces of paper going to my recycle and stuff.
Yeah,
So I'll flex a little.
yeah.
So, otherwise, anything you guys have for us, I'll do my best. We had an event happen yesterday. I wanted to thank our staff, the police department and stuff for what happened in all of the local vicinities, all of the local, what am I trying to say? Police departments,
First responders.
first respond, everybody that did this, and the outcome is there, and I hope the person recovers. So, no shots fired, no nothing, but it was a long drawn out process, so.
Yeah,
There have been multiple ones in Corcoran recently.
Inconvenienced a lot of the neighbors out there, but again, our police department is doing a really good job. And all the surrounding communities jumped all over it. I think 4 different SWAT groups came in, a lot of stuff. So it's a reason we're first or second safest community in Minnesota is it was ran well. So, don't want to get down on something like that, but there's a lot of good that came out of that. Everything else that's going on, check the list of stuff that's coming up. Your guys' input is valued. Natalie, Dwight, thank you guys very, very much. And like I said already, that survey has gotten a lot of compliments from even some of the most critical people. So,
So then last thing is to just, and I won't go through the commissioner liaison calendar too intensely because the hope is that we would have another commissioner next month,
Yeah,
You
which
should.
would alter that. And
except
so,
I'm realizing. we
yep,
have
but
to-
Lanterman is on there. So that's what I was gonna say, is that I would just at this point in time plan on doing the July 11th in place of Lanterman. And then we can tuck in, the new person probably for in between Lind and Hargreaves, when and if we.
I believe we've gotten 3 applicants or 4.
You know, I have not gotten the latest update from
Okay,
Michelle. Last I
and
heard
we're
was 1 or 2.
trying to do
yeah.
those interviews, this week and early next to be able to appoint somebody for
Cool.
next council, so.
So Mark did go on to the city council.
Yes, yep. He was sworn in last month.
How long is the application open? Or is it closed already?
Ooh, you know, I should, here, let me look, it's on the website, hang on a second.
Oh, I can look, no worries. I just was curious.
Okay, but if nobody needs to make an immediate change to those first 2 meetings, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting, and then we can wrap things up.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I second.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. All those opposed? All right, adjourned.